deplete folate. I mentioned methotrexate earlier for those of you that are diagnosed with diseases like RA or reactive arthritis. Those block folate. And you also have metformin, which is the drug that is commonly used in diabetics for insulin sensitivity. Metformin inhibits folate, but also inhibits vitamin B12 as well as CoQ10. So important to understand that, because the deficiency of these nutrients contributes to an increased risk of heart disease and vascular inflammation. And so if you're on this drug for any great length of time and you start developing neuropathy, neuropathy is commonly blamed on diabetes, right? We've all heard diabetic neuropathy as a potential side effect of being diabetic, but I've seen it more that it's not the diabetes causing the neuropathy so much as it is the treatment for the diabetes causing the deficiencies of the nutrients that regulate the health of the nerve, and so you end up with these neuropathies as a result of drug-induced nutritional deficiency. So keep that in mind if you're on metformin. Again, you should have your doctor measuring these things on a regular basis. Now, if you're popping aspirin or other NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, etc., know that these can also contribute to folate deficit, as well as vitamin C, as well as iron deficiencies. So again, and I'm not talking about the single use, like maybe you took some because you had a joint pain one day and you just needed a little bit to take the edge off a little bit. I'm talking about those of you who are chronically taking it daily. Who takes it daily? Typically, people where their cardiologists want their blood thinner because they've had either a risk of stroke or heart attack, and so the cardiologist says, take that baby aspirin every day, right? That baby aspirin is blocking folate, vitamin C, and iron. Deficiency of these nutrients increases the risk for heart disease. Again, it's another classic scenario where the very drug designed to treat the potential risk for the disease leads to nutritional deficiency that increases the risk for the same disease the drug is trying to reduce the risk for. You're never going to win in that situation. So you have to know these things, because I can promise you the likelihood that your cardiologist or your endocrinologist or GP is going to understand drug-induced nutritional deficiencies is close to 0%. Those doctors don't get trained in drug-induced nutritional deficiencies, so it's not something I would hold them accountable to. It's just not something they research. So you also have antibiotics. Now, how many of you have used antibiotics repetitively over the course of your life? Antibiotics can contribute to folate deficiency as well, so be aware of that. You also have diuretics, another drug used to commonly treat hypertension or high blood pressure, can contribute to folate deficiency. As I showed you earlier, folate deficiency can contribute to heart disease. So why are we taking a diuretic? To reduce the risk of heart disease through blood pressure. Alcohol. Now, a lot of you don't consider alcohol a drug, but it very much is a drug. And alcohol depletes folate because when you drink alcohol, you need more folate to properly metabolize that alcohol. The same thing we see with high caffeine. Caffeine is a type of diuretic. So I'm not talking about those of you drink a cup of tea or a cup of coffee a day and kind of keep it within reason. I'm talking about those of you that drink the pitcher of coffee every day to keep your energy up, or those of you out there swilling down energy drinks with 300, 400, 500 milligrams plus of caffeine a day. This is where you're going to get into a lot of trouble with nutritional depletion. So be aware of that. Okay. Let's look at a couple of other things here. I think it's important to understand a little bit more context around some of these nutrients as well. I just showed you a bunch of medicines that can deplete folate, among other nutrients, but I want to show you as well where folate works. So, one of the things that folate touches so many different chemical pathways in the body, and that's why it can lead to so many different risks and problems. So this publication, although the article is about diabetic retinopathy, so basically damage to the eye, and one of the side effects of diabetes over a long enough period of time is blindness through retinopathy. But what these authors of this paper did a really good job of was demonstrating the nutrients around the folate cycle. And so what we're looking at here, I told you earlier that folate is necessary to metabolize this chemical compound called homocysteine. It actually converts homocysteine into methionine, and then methionine helps to form a substance called SAMe, which is very, very important. SAMe plays a major role here in, this is the kind of the end stage where we're getting DNA, RNA, phospholipids, and proteins being produced. So again, this pathway becomes very important for a lot of different reasons. But again, we get rid of a toxic compound and we end up with a compound that can help to make new DNA, RNA, and cell membrane components. We can also get rid of homocysteine through, so this way is generated by folate. So this pathway is folate dependent. Now you also need vitamin B12. Remember I told you they work together in a lot of different ways. This is one of the ways where vitamin B12 plays a critical role as well, along with folate. But you can also get rid of homocysteine with vitamin B6. So this is where other vitamins play a role in this pathway as well. So vitamin B6 can actually convert homocysteine downstream into cysteine, which is important and necessary for taurine and bile salts. So those of you with bile problems, if you have had gallbladder issues, commonly it's a common thing for doctors to remove someone's gallbladder, but taurine deficiency, and again, part of this, you need B6, taurine deficiency can contribute to poor gallbladder function. You've also got cysteine that can convert into sulfate as well. So again, we get rid of homocysteine through this pathway. We can also get rid of it through this pathway over here, which helps to make something called glutathione. Now, many of you have heard of glutathione as a very powerful antioxidant. It's absolutely necessary. So again, you can see the key mechanism of getting rid of this toxic compound can lead to so many other good things. And a lot of this is revolving around B vitamins. So folate being one of the main ones, but B12 and vitamin B6 are also important. But then you can also see in this study here, these authors are talking about how glutathione is important to protect the eye, but then you also have all these other nutrients that they're referring to as eye protective as well. So vitamin B3 and vitamin B2 and vitamin B1 and selenium, as well as vitamin C, E, alpha lipoic acid, zinc, copper, and lutein. So in this study, their design is just to show that elevations in homocysteine, which we don't want, remember that's that key chemical, is a bad thing because it leads to oxidative stress, and that oxidative stress can cause damage and potentiate diabetic retinopathy. So looking at optimal combination of nutrients to reduce homocysteine and support the reduction of oxidative stress was the kind of the target goal of the authors of this paper in helping you understand that. But that's one aspect, again, of folate. And then another aspect of folate is in its metabolism of estrogen and breast cancer risk. So if you look over here, central theme again, homocysteine. Homocysteine is critical in producing methionine, which then turns into SAMe, which this process right here, you see this box I'm drawing for you, that's catechol methyltransferase. This is getting a little technical, but this is an enzyme that helps to properly metabolize estrogens. You see that term, methoxyestrogens, because what happens if we don't have adequate SAMe and we have poor COMT function is we get different kind of formation of different kinds of estrogens. And these estrogens have the potential to be genotoxic and increase the potential risk of certain types of cancers. So we really need folate, right, to get here. We need folate to get here to help us to properly metabolize estrogen. So again, just another important role of folate, ladies, as it relates to the potential for the development of breast cancer. Let's talk about how we can get folate in our diet. Some of the best food sources I've got listed here on the board for you. Hands down, liver, #1, best source. Spinach, those of you that may be following a low oxalate diet may not be able to tolerate spinach very well, or beets for that matter, but some of these other things, romaine lettuce, cauliflower, squashes, and then we get over here to strawberries, bell peppers, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, tomatoes, avocado, broccoli, cabbage. Another food that's rather rich in folate, if you eat enough of it rather, is egg. Eggs are, if you know, very rarely does somebody eat one egg, but if you eat, 3, 4 eggs, you get quite a bit of folate in that. It's upwards of 80 milligrams or 80 micrograms per 100 milligrams of eggs. So not a bad source overall. So should you supplement with folate? And the answer is it depends. Could you? Yes. Is it dangerous? No. There's no real long-term research or studies that show that supplementing with actual folate, and I'm not talking about synthetic folate, I'm talking about real methylfolate, are really no huge long-term risk concerns. There are a couple of minor observations around prostate, guys with prostate issues. So if you are one of those gentlemen, measure it. Measure your levels before you consider supplementing. But beyond that kind of generalized exception, there's really not a lot of danger in supplementing. My opinion of supplementation, though, regardless, is if you don't know whether or not you need it, there's no purpose or specific reason in doing high doses of folate just because. So it's always best to just get it measured. If you test, you don't have to guess. Again, the best way to measure it is through intracellular nutrition analysis. Now, if you're going to supplement with folate, you want to use 5-MTHF. This is actually a patented type of natural methylated folate. And so if you're looking at different options for supplements, folinic acid and folic acid are not good as supplements. So if you're looking at a product and it contains those ingredients, I don't recommend them. I do recommend 5-MTHF. Now, if we're looking at what is the adult kind of general recommendation for adults, it's 400 micrograms a day, although they've recently changed that to something called a DFE. That stands for dietary folate equivalence, but 400 micrograms a day is a pretty decent supplemental dose. As far as women are concerned, 800 to 1,000 micrograms, or again, DFE, because of the risk during pregnancy of birth defects, the need for folate goes up. Why? Again, going back to what folate does, it's important in DNA and RNA, and if you're with child, there's a lot of this going on, and so get this so that you don't have this, and that's this dose. So that's the gist. Now, beyond that, you may have a number of the different types of symptoms or other disease processes that we spoke about earlier, and you may want to consider using folate as a supplement to support those things. But at the end of the day, remember, those symptoms that I showed you are not just unique to folate. And so you could have other nutritional deficiencies also contributing to symptoms just like what folate causes. So it's always best to test as opposed to guessing. But if you're going to guess, it's relatively safe to supplement between 400 and 800. So let's make room over here. 400 and 800 micrograms per day. Again, micrograms are DFE. They're labeling it now as DFE instead of micrograms, but dietary folate equivalence is what that stands for. So 400 to 800 is generally a pretty safe dose, and a lot of research shows that when people are between 400 and 800, actually 400 and 999, there's actually quite substantial potential benefit. So again, consider that if you're considering supplementing, but best bet is always ask your doctor to run appropriate testing to assess whether or not you need it, and this is especially true if you're taking any of those medications that we know can deplete folate.